Hey guys, I'm Dylan. What's up? Today I'm going to be analyzing my Common App essay. So I'm going to be going through the whole essay and explaining exactly what I did in terms of my structure, in terms of my word choice and the way I was writing things, and yeah, just basically my whole strategy for writing this essay. This is the Common App essay that got me into Stanford, USC, NYU, and a bunch of other schools, and then I also used this essay for my UC PIQs, but for the UC application, I shortened this essay a little bit to fit the word count, but it is basically the same essay. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to read through a paragraph first, and then I'm going to analyze it and tell you guys the different things that I did in there. And I've already gone through and written it up, so I will show you that and just basically explain it. And then, yeah, I'll just go through each paragraph like that. So let's get into it. I have a screen recording going on, and here we go. All right, here we are. So basically, first thing I want to say is this essay fully belongs to me, so please do not copy any of what I've written because that would be plagiarism. All right, so the prompt that I chose for my Common App essay was describe a problem you've solved or a problem you'd like to solve. It can be an intellectual challenge, a research query, an ethical dilemma, anything that is of personal importance, no matter the scale. Explain its significance to you and what steps you took or could be taken to identify a solution. So here's the first paragraph. The rattle of a doorknob shook me awake, and then, bam, a door slammed open. He's coming, aided by his walker. Clunk, shuffle, shuffle. My clock read 4:27 a.m. It was the third time tonight, a new record. The hall light switched on, and in Chinese, my grandfather's deep voice pierced the night against my mom's whispers. As usual, he was disoriented, thought it was time to eat, and being hard of hearing, required loud convincing by my mom to return to bed. All right, so let's look at this. So this is clearly the opening paragraph. It is an anecdote, so I chose to tell this in terms of a story. So it's very like story written, right? I'm not just like, my grandfather walked outside in the middle of the night and I was very annoyed. Like I really told the story of how it went down. I used onomatopoeia, as you can see in what I underlined in red. These are sounds, but in the word form, like bam, clunk, shuffle, shuffle. These are actual sounds that I would hear. So just to give a more sensory explanation and description of what was going on in this situation, that's what I chose to do. And then when I underlined in green, I said he's coming and then my grandfather. So basically in the beginning, I said he's coming, but I didn't say who he was. So I kind of led up to this and I made it build up. So I built up this mysterious vibe. I chose not to reveal who I was talking about or what the context of the situation was until the end of the paragraph. So I kind of wanted to grab the reader's attention at first before I explained everything that was going on. And then in terms of the yellow highlight, I'll talk about that in the second paragraph. So let's read the second one. Later that morning, as my dad and I prepared breakfast, my grandfather hobbled into the kitchen. Good morning, Yaya, I said, still groggy from last night. Yaya's eyes scanned the room. Where am I? He asked. I explained once again. This is our apartment and your new home. Your wife, Maria, moved back to Taiwan last month, so now we are taking care of you. I watched the sweet smile vanish from his face as he struggled to remember what had become fragmented by Alzheimer's disease. Plaques and tangles had accumulated in his brain, and now they spread into our everyday lives. So this is kind of continuing on with the anecdote. It's still following the story. It's like the next morning now and we're preparing breakfast. So what I underlined in green, this is our apartment and your new home, blah, 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 that is providing a lot of context. So it sets up the status quo where we are right now in this story. And it also explains a lot about my background as an applicant, as a person, like where I am coming from and my family and stuff like that. So then now I'm going to talk about what's in the yellow highlight. So basically, let's look at the things that I highlighted in yellow. He's coming. It was the third time. As usual, I explained once again, and then Alzheimer's disease. So I used a lot of words that made it seem like this was a usual occurrence. It's not like this just happened one time. Like, it was constantly happening. It was the third time, as usual. Like, this thing kept happening. So this was a repetitive situation, and then in the end, it's because Alzheimer's disease. It was because I had to explain all this stuff over and over again. We had to have this experience over and over again because my grandfather was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And then the last thing for this paragraph is plaques and tangles had accumulated in his brain and now they spread into our everyday lives. So this was a metaphor technique that I used where plaques and tangles are not only like literally the things that are going on in his brain, because that's what happens when you have Alzheimer's disease. You have plaques and tangles within your brain. But I'm also talking about how these tangles represent how our lives were now filled with these complications. So that metaphor kind of places it in both his brain and our lives. The next paragraph. My family was completely unprepared to care for a 90-year-old disabled man. There were no funds for professional elder care, so my mom, dad, and I had to quickly adapt to accommodate his needs. After a number of falls, we installed guardrails, a shower chair, and other safety equipment into the bathroom, which he shared with me. So in this paragraph, it's no longer an anecdote. I'm no longer like really following this story, but now I'm more explaining it. I'm describing it in detail. I'm describing the situation in detail. I'm raising the stakes. So I'm saying, okay, things are kind of getting worse at this point. Also, this provides a lot of context on my home life and my living situation and my financial standing. So now let's move on. My grandfather's dementia erased the connection that he and I once shared. When I was younger, we used to solve math puzzles together, but now we couldn't even hold a conversation. As I looked back, I realized Yaya had lived a sedentary senior life. Would a more active lifestyle have led to a different outcome? How can we live our final years with independence, health, and happiness? So this is where I tied in everything I was talking about my grandpa to how it affects me. Because something that you always want to do if you're talking about another person is explain how that affects you. So in this paragraph, I'm explaining how our relationship is what changed and how this experience made me question what it means to grow old. So not only was it like affecting our personal relationship, it was challenging me to a new perspective, and it made me question something that I hadn't thought about before. Also, it says when I was younger, we used to solve math puzzles together. That was me just also throwing out the fact that like, hey, I like math. So it also just helps my application become more cohesive because I have mentioned some other like math related things throughout my application, and this is another way of me tying it all together. And then at the end, I asked these questions. Would a more active lifestyle have led to a different outcome? How can we live our final years with independence, health, happiness? That was me using varying sentence structures. So I included questions. So everything wasn't just like a sentence and another sentence and another sentence. I was trying to vary up the sentence structure for the purpose of my writing sounding nicer. The next paragraph goes, I noticed that our American culture glorifies youth and nearly ignores what it means to grow old. While our secondary education system addresses the beginning of life, it fails to bring awareness to our final decades and how we will be supported during that time. So this is the realization. It's almost the turning point, but the turning point is more in the next paragraph. So yes, the stakes have been raised, and now this is the realization that I've had. This is moving from a personal example to a more broader context. And what I underlined in green, I said, boom, hit him with the big point. This is the really big point that I realized, that American culture glorifies youth and nearly ignores what it means to grow old. All right, the next paragraph. Whenever there's research to be done, my parents assign it to me. By reading many articles on elder care, I discovered that the senior population will exponentially skyrocket in the coming years due to the aging baby boomer generation. It became clear that a comprehensive resource was needed to educate this massive influx of seniors and their families. So this is the main turning point. This is where I say, okay, now we have a problem, and what can I do about it? What needs to be done about this problem? And I also underlined senior population will exponentially skyrocket, blah, 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 baby boomer generation. This is me showing that I've done my research and I know about this topic. So you want to make sure that you actually know what you're talking about and you prove to them, like, sure, I'm interested in this subject, but also I know a lot about it and I've done my research. So the next one. I am developing a mobile app to prepare families for elder care and maintain patients' cognitive health. My app will enable users to complete advanced care planning documents, compare elder care options for both in-home and outside facilities, and access practical resources such as videos and diagrams to help families assist their loved ones. Additionally, it will promote cognitive health through exercise, nutrition, sleep, brain games, and a daily journal. The games will be personalized to exercise memory, like matching the names of family members with their appropriate pictures. Users will be reminded to write or speak into their journal with thoughts and feelings to strengthen their reasoning skills. I am currently in the process of researching and designing a prototype for my app, and I plan to continue building it in college. This is the main paragraph where I'm explaining the quote-unquote solution. This is what I am doing about it. And then so I say mobile app and then blah, 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 explain everything. So another thing is I was told by someone who reviewed my essay that I should really elaborate more on this part because I didn't before. I kind of just like said what it was, but I didn't really elaborate it as much as I did here. So since the solution is really what colleges want to hear about, they don't want to just hear a bunch of your problems and everything that you're going through, but what can you do about it? What have you done about it? And how did that change you as a person? So I got real specific here. Another thing is that I underlined journal with thoughts and feelings, strengthen reasoning skills. So that sentence told two things. One, I value journaling, hence the other essay that I wrote on journaling. So I actually submitted an essay to Stanford, USC. I submitted this one essay where I talked about journaling. So that's obviously of value to me. So I also just like threw that in there. And then two, this shows that I've done my research once again, and that I know that journaling strengthens reasoning. And so the last sentence talks about my current stance in this project and what I plan to do in the future. So this is tying in like how can I apply what I learned to the future. And now for the last paragraph. Yaya can no longer walk. While the challenges have increased, I've learned to appreciate the different stages of life and return the love and care that my grandfather once gave me. With this in practice, Yaya's disposition improved and he accepted our home as his. My help is now received with gracious smiles and exclamations of wow, 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 especially as I serve him meals. I am determined to sort through the tangles of life. So when I hear the doorknob rattle at night, I know it's just a reminder for us all to make healthier choices today for a better tomorrow. Okay, let's talk about this paragraph. This is the final concluding paragraph. This is bringing it back to my personal story because I kind of went away from that and I talked about the more broader sense and the research and what I was doing about it. But now this brings it back to the beginning because you always want to come full circle in your essays. So now I'm back to the story. I'm talking about how this impacted me and how this impacted him. Even though these problems aren't necessarily solved, like I said, the challenges have increased. So okay, things may have gotten worse, but how have we changed as people? I've learned to appreciate the different stages of life and return the love and care that my grandfather once gave me. It's my perspective that has really changed on this, and this really shows the values. It gets across the values that I have gained. And that's really the most important thing that you want to do in your essays is convey certain values. So these values are acceptance, understanding, responsibility, cooperation, and compassion. These are the values that I specifically wanted to get across to the admissions officers through my essay. So also when I said return the love and care that my grandfather once gave me, that was also, once again, making it full circle, tying back into earlier when I mentioned how it affected our relationship. So if I scroll up, you'll see over here, that's when I talked about the connection that he and I once shared, and I would talk about what life was like before the Alzheimer's disease. And then once again, I make a reference to that in the end. And then also in red, as you see gracious smiles and exclamations of wow, 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 that was me showing rather than telling. I always say this as a tip for college app essays, show, don't tell. So this is a good example. So I'm showing what his acceptance looks like rather than just saying, he accepted us. He accepted our home as his. Like, yeah, I say that here, but how? Why? I always want to say how and why. Those are questions you always want to ask in your essays, so you really make sure that you are elaborating and analyzing and getting your point across. So sure, it was received with gracious smiles and wow, 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 like this is the way that he was really accepting us. And then once again, like I said, tying everything back together, my last sentence starts with, so when I hear the doorknob rattle at night. When I hear the doorknob rattle at night, that is something that I opened the essay with. If we look back at the beginning, the first sentence in my essay said, the rattle of a doorknob shook me awake. So that was a way to really come full circle with it. And then lastly, it says, I know it's just a reminder for us to make healthier choices today for a better tomorrow. So that ending sentence was really tricky to come up with because I initially wanted to use a cliche, use a quote that like people usually say, but I had to stray away from that because you never want to use cliches in your essay. So I had to figure out a way of crafting what I wanted to say in my own words instead of reusing someone else's. And that is my Common App essay. I hope this helped. I thought it would be interesting to, analyze an actual essay so we could break down the specific things that I constantly talk about in my other videos, but I think it really clicks if you see it in practice and you see how it's actually used in an example essay. So yeah, like I said, I encourage you to look into other example essays and read up on what other people have done to help them get into certain schools, because that will help you when writing your own essay so you know what strategies to implement and what techniques to do and approaches to take. That's all for today. I wish you guys luck on your college applications and let me know if you have any questions. See you guys later.